Randy Kroll is a CPA with 40 years of experience, specializing in the areas of financial services, manufacturing, and nonprofits. But what's more, he has extensive leadership experience. Randy worked his way up, leading the CPA firm of Wilkerson Guthman for 8 years, and then transitioned to leading a multi-campus Christian school for 6 years. He went on to lead other institutions, and today serves on the board of several nonprofits, as well as a private construction company. At the Platinum Group, Randy uses all of this experience to help business owners with transition planning, strategic planning, talent management, and of course, interpreting their financial statements, particularly during periods of turnarounds and economic turbulence. Randy, given all of your experience and the different economic times you've seen over the years, what are your thoughts in terms of some lessons learned from back then that might help people today?
Well, the lessons I've learned are probably most importantly around people and the giftedness of people, as well as the ability of people to change. And so I think it's important always to recognize that in turbulent times like we face today, that people are going to address those issues in their own minds in very different ways. And so as a leader in an organization, I think that the leader needs to be really sensitive to how people are processing, but also give good leadership from the standpoint of giving a sense of hope for the future, a sense of direction, so that the individuals in the organization sort of have a lighthouse out there from which they're operating. So I think it's really important for leaders to operate very deliberately in today's environment as someone who's offering that kind of guidance and hope.
You know, sometimes culture is a big factor, and CEOs can have what they think is a good culture because things are going along just fine. And all of a sudden there's something crazy that comes up, like a pandemic, and things get thrown off. What have you seen, and what are some tips you have for how do you make sure that your culture is not only tuned up as much as it can be in general, but let's say you get to one of those points where it's like, oh boy, we have a few weak spots in our culture. How do you rectify that while you're in the middle of a storm?
Well, you know, culture is very important in an organization. And so in tough times and pandemics and crisis basically is where culture needs to be really undergirded with what is important to the organization. And so you have to talk about those values as an organization. You have to talk about what is important to the organization and how those values are gonna take us through a tough time, because that's what's going to hold up that culture. And it's going to be what folks can really, again, have a line towards the future. They're going to be able to see what direction. And you know, decisions in a time like this are coming in very rapidly. You have to make some quick decisions. You have to make some important decisions. And if there's not a consistency to those decisions, and if the folks in the organization cannot see that consistency, it just becomes even more of an unsettling time to them. So again, I would just encourage to talk about values, talk about what's important to the organization, and how, as a group, we can get through this together.
Some of the other leaders I've talked with in this series of different interviews have mentioned talent management has been a big factor. And that while maybe 95% of who you have on a team is working well, there might be one or two people who need some improvement. How do you deal with that, and how decisive should you be? How quick should you be to either have somebody moved out and bring somebody else in, or spend the time working with them to see if they can improve?
I think it's important in a period like we are now, is to have those key conversations because you have the attention of people. And I've had to do this just in the last number of weeks where folks are not operating at the level that they should be for a longer period of time. And we've had the opportunity just in conversation to start that dialogue of saying, how can we do things better? Now, there has to be ownership on the part of the individual as well, in terms of ownership in terms of the past, but also the ownership on the as it relates to how things can be improved. And if there's not a buy-in to that, if there's not a recognition of that, it's time to make a change. But life is changing so dramatically now that my thought is to work with somebody, unless it's a real critical role that's not getting done, to work with somebody through this time period to the point where they really see either the opportunities for improvement or the opportunity to exit with dignity and move on to something new, both for the good of the organization and as well as for their own organization.
Yep.
There's going to be lots of personnel upset over the course of the next number of years, as a lot of layoffs likely to happen, as well as companies come back, as they see growth happening again. There's going to be opportunities, and so I think that we also have to incentivize people to look for new opportunities if it's not a fit with the current organization.
Let's talk financials. What are some things that companies should be doing right now if they haven't done it already when it comes to their financial situation?
Well, this is a common theme here at Platinum as well, is you really need to mind the store. You always need to be minding the store, but right now is particularly important. So financial statements have to be done and done well, so they're reflecting the picture of the organization. Cash flow has to be managed tightly. And we talk about it from the 13-week cash flow model. Very good model. Every organization I've gone into as an interim leader, I've instituted that, and it's changed dramatically how people look at both the cash control as well as sort of the stability of the organization. So internally, it makes a big difference in terms of how those who particularly in the finance area as well as leadership, start seeing the organization. So strategic planning and strategic financial planning, doing projections, doing scenario planning, financial planning, all those things are very important. And of course, many organizations don't have the internal abilities to do that. So, and that's exactly why we're here as a consulting firm, is to help develop those tools so that they're ongoing tools for the future of the business, primarily in times like this where there's uncertainty in the business.
What do you think, out of all the different things somebody should be doing, 13-week cash flow and talent management and some of the things we just talked about, what's the single most important thing that a business owner or leader should be doing right now?
I would say it's the strategic planning. But before going into really strategic planning, one of the things that one of the practices I've adopted over the last 8 weeks, as I've been spending a lot of time in my home office, working longer days than I do it in this office, right, that I'm sitting in today, is if somebody's name comes to mind, a business colleague, former colleagues, a friend in business, someone I know well, some that I don't know well. If the name just comes to mind, I'll pick up the phone and I'll call them and say, "How you doing? What's been your experience during this time?" And really, that's a way of supporting them, but it's also an important time for me to start integrating some new thinking into how I'm thinking. Right now, there is so much information coming at us, just a ton full of emails every day of folks dispensing information about, the PPP forgivable loan program or the other SBA programs, or legal issues or HR issues. All that stuff is very important, but it's really information overload at this point. And so I find that having those conversations really helps me to start whittling through that from the standpoint of what are other people thinking as well. And it's kind of the intuition starts kicking in as to what's important and what's not important. And so I really encourage people before they get into that planning mode or during that planning mode, they continue to develop those important business relationships, whether it be attorneys or accountants, bankers, marketing people, all those folks with talents and abilities who are in their own world looking at the future and can really speak into a leader's situation in a particular organization. With that information, I think it's really important to start projecting that into the future. The world is changing so dramatically. I keep telling my folks that I'm leading is that the world of March 15, the normal of March 15 is not going to ever happen again. We have to look for a new normal. We have to develop a new normal. And we don't really know what that is yet because we're still in that topsy-turvy world of daily changing. If you think about what has happened in the last week again, and the fact that our city has changed so dramatically in terms of our psyche, and the business community has been decimated with again with a whole new reality. And so this is a really important time for us to really rethink business and how we go about business. So.
Yep. We only have a few minutes left. One thing I wanted to ask is, how do you communicate with your employees during all this? How do you motivate them, keep them motivated, and most importantly, keep them focused on what the organization needs them to focus on?
That's a really good question. And I think that it's constant communication. And so again, I go back to the interim leadership I'm doing, and we've been communicating, not just I, but the leadership team on a daily basis with the group as well as with individuals in that group, just to encourage them, to give them a hope for a better future, but also to be real with them from the standpoint of how painful this is, how different it is. And that, one of the other things I like to do is point out the various, I would say, crisis points in the last 20, 30, 40 years, and say, look at how our lives have changed through those crisis period. 9/11, the depression, Great Depression, recession of the 2008, 2009, how our lives have changed, but how we really grew through that into new economies, new ways of thinking about business. And we're going to be able to do that again. It's a new opportunity. And so I think we have to grab on it as a new opportunity.
Yeah. One last question, and that is, anything else that I should have asked you today?
Well, I think the question that I get a lot of is, so what can we expect about the future? And I think that, well, we can always ask that question, and we can always speculate about that. I think that that takes a great deal of dialogue as well as specifics. And so this morning as well, I was on a phone call with a business person and just projecting out into the future. And I really talked in terms of let's have a deeper conversation in terms of what we want it to be, not what we're speculating it to be. And then we can create that future together. And I think that's, again, something that as individuals is important, that we work together to create new futures rather than to continue to speculate about them.
I misspoke before. Now I have another question, but
Oh,
this is the last question. um, how do you strategically plan when you're so busy having to put out fires with your business and just stay alive? How do you make time to do what you're
mhm.
talking about in terms of planning your future?
Yeah. In this period of time, what I've found is that the time that I spend in my office at home, um, I'm on the phone and I'm on Zoom meetings a lot. There is that time that I can sit and think as well. And if I think about that from the standpoint of the efficiency of life now, I'm not commuting. Um, you know, my breaks are probably shorter. I don't have as far to walk to get a drink of water or whatever it may be. But in any case, I think that we do have some efficiencies in this period of time. But also it's a matter of stopping and really thinking, and not again let all the urgent consume the important. So there has to be a priority towards that as well.
Mhm. Well, that's a good note to end on. Randy, thank you so much for taking some time today to share your perspectives and your thoughts with everybody.
My pleasure, Dale. Thanks for hosting.
And I want to thank everybody else for tuning in today. If you have any questions or would like to reach out to Randy and ask him questions specifically, you can reach him through the Platinum Group at 952-829-5700. You can also go to the website, theplatinumgrp.com, learn more about Randy and also learn more about Platinum Group there as well. So thanks again for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.